Welcome to the Franchise Secrets Podcast with your host, Eric Van Horn. And today I'm going to talk about partnerships. And I've been involved with partnerships really from the beginning of my franchise journey. Even before that, I got into a partnership with my parents that allowed me to get into franchising. And my parents did not want to get into a partnership with me in the beginning. And so I did some things to get them to want to be in a partnership with me. And I've seen the value of partnerships as I've evolved in my business life. So let me back up from the beginning and let you know that most of you know the story. I bought a piece of real estate rental property down by the beach. Now, it was not like this beachfront property, like, I might lead you to believe if I said I bought some beachfront property, but it was a rougher condo down by the beach. And it really came to be because I was doing a lawn for somebody. I was in the lawn care business and I was working on the lawn, and eventually I had an opportunity to buy this thing and I didn't have any money. I mean, I was just starting a business because I didn't want to work for anybody. So I found an opportunity. I knew the opportunity could make money. I didn't have the money myself, and at least to buy that. And so I went to my parents. I said, will you guys partner with me on this? And I wanted to do something that I wanted to give them something that was irresistible for them to say no to. And so basically my offer to them was, you pay for the closing costs, because I didn't have $5,000 to pay for closing costs. And when we sell the property, I will pay you back half of that. So they didn't really have anything to lose, and they got instant equity, a lot of equity into the property, only because I didn't have $5,000 to buy the property myself. And so that is how I made my first large chunk of money to buy my first franchise. And so, what that also did is that allowed them to see me and my tenacity and how I wanted to go after something and get it. And I had value to offer in my time, but I also had like real monetary value to offer them because I created it. Same thing when we got in this franchise. I was doing it by myself, and then I asked them to see if they would come into it with me, and they said, yeah, we'll do it because we can do it together. And part of the reason, they did not want to see me fail, right? And so they came into it wanting to help. And if they could make money at it, I think that was a bonus, but they didn't want to see their son, screw something up. And that turned out to be a really good thing. In the beginning, it was hard. It was not the easiest franchise. It wasn't something that I really enjoyed in terms of a product or service, but it was where I started to learn business, and I learned that business wasn't about the product or service. There's always something behind it. And in this business, it was a business about marketing. Who could market better? And I've gone on to realize that is a lot of businesses. I mean, what you think the business is, it's really not. It's really something beyond that. And it might be a marketing, it might be sales, it might be something other than the product or service. And that was the case in my first business. And I happened to be pretty good at marketing. So I tended to do more of the marketing in that business. And it was a really good partnership. And we eventually bought more. But I think the key thing to that was I was in all my partnerships, I don't look at it to see what can I get out of this. I think, what can I offer them? How can I make this an equitable relationship for everybody? So that was my first entry into business and as a business partner, and it happened to be my parents. So it was pretty easy that way. But at the same time, that can be kind of difficult because your family and is conversation always revolving around work, and you have to learn how to shut that off. And we did that. And I think part of the reason is because I grew up in this entrepreneurial family, and mom and dad were always talking business, and they knew how to shut it off, or, they got better at that as they grew into their own, grew their own business, and certain things, were reserved for business talk. And there are other times when it was all about family. So that was 9 years of my life in that business. And some of them I did as a partnership with them, and some of it I did on my own. So it had nothing to do with them. And so I had locations that were just me and locations that were together with them. So what we exited that business, and it was strategic how we exited. I'll probably do a podcast on exiting businesses, because as I started to write down just the different businesses that I've owned, I realized that I've owned quite a few of them, and they've all just been different challenges, different relationships, different strategies with all of them. And so I saw trends in that first business, and I saw the way the business model was originally created. As life went on in that particular franchise, the business model changed because the market changed, and I saw that coming. Sometimes I get lucky. Sometimes, I look like I'm really smart. On that one, I looked like I was really smart because I exited at a really good time. But that's just, I'd say that's a lot of luck, because it very well could have, I could have left a lot of money on the table as well. So anyway, sold that business and then got into my next one. By the way, this is kind of at the same time is when I started to get into franchise consulting, because I wanted to find my next business and I did not know where to look. And I knew a lot about one brand. I didn't know a lot about a lot of brands. So I started consulting to understand what I was going to buy next, because I knew as consultants, we got, a lot of really good access to people that the general public doesn't get access to, and we can talk about things openly. And so I started to dive into a lot of different brands and to see what was next for me. And I like these master franchises or area developments or regional developments. And that's what my next one was, because I had been a franchisee and an area developer, and I wanted to become an area developer in my next brand. I found the brand, and again, I said, Mom and Dad, do you want to do this with me? And then we asked two other people that we knew that were friends of mine from the first franchise that I was involved with, and said, do you want to do this? One of them said no, and the other one said yes. And he's still a good friend of mine today. And so we got into that business, and we were going into it, and we were doing really well in that business, from all the criteria that an area developer would want to complete and do well in the business in terms of selling franchises, getting franchises up and going, and whatnot. And at that point, some things changed in the franchisor, and they wanted the area developers to do more and to have a more active role in the business. And that's not what we originally were thinking of in terms of that much of a time commitment. And so we had a choice, either to sell it or to put more of our own time into it, or to bring somebody into our partnership. And so that's what we started to think, like, what are our options? And we didn't want to sell it because we liked the business, and we didn't want to put more hours into it because we were all doing other things. And so that left kind of the third option, that we thought, well, in this business, there's someone in the market that would be a perfect match for the need that was now something that was needed in the business. And there was a franchisee that could fit that need really well. And so we approached the franchisee and said, hey, we'd love to have you part of our partnership. And again, like, what do they want? And they didn't want to come up with a bunch of money, but they had a lot of the skill set that we needed. And so we basically offered them equity that they could earn into the business without having to spend their money to get into it. And so we valued the business. We brought them into the business, and they earned equity, and they did a lot of the work. And it was easier work for them because they were living in the business as franchisees. They were local and had relationships. So it would have been very difficult for me to do, but it was very easy for them to do. And so we brought them into the business, and then we had an exit a couple of years later. And that was a good thing as well. So during that same time that I owned my second franchise, I got into my third brand. And I was, I met the founders of this brand. And at this time, I had done one. I had a lot of retail locations. I'd done area development, and I wanted to get back into the franchising side of things, the franchisee side of things, not the area development. Because the challenge with area development is, and there's challenges with everything, and that's one of the things I just want to make super clear. There's challenges to everything, but the challenge with area development is when you are, that business model is you are helping franchisees buy, and then you are supporting those franchisees. and you cannot move the needle. You can be the best area developer, but it's up to the franchisees to do really well themselves, and you can only help them so much. And so I wanted to get back into the franchisee side of things because my efforts, how smart I am or not, how good I am or not, has a direct impact on the outcome of that business, the success or lack of success. A lot of that will fall on me if I'm the franchisee. So I got introduced to some people in this next franchise, the founders of it. And I thought, this is a fascinating concept. The most expensive one by far that I had been in. I mean, the earlier ones, not the area developments, but the earlier ones were, you could get them started up for $100,000, $120,000. This one was like $800,000 plus $1 million to get a location opened up. And I didn't want to do many of those on my own. And so I recruited some buddies of mine and I said, hey guys, do you want to do this with me? So mom and dad were not involved in this one. This was me and 3 of my friends. And we were all part of the original franchisees in that first franchise that I was a franchisee with. So we all seen each other and we started to put our resources together from money and time and just, the things that we're good at. And we said, let's grow this thing. And we bought the whole entire Orange County market, and that was left. And then we started to develop, and we developed rapidly. And it became and so I'm going to talk about some of the challenges here, because this is where there's some challenges that came in and some things that I learned, because the first ones were really good. And all of my partnerships have been, for the most part, pretty solid, but there are things that I think we can learn from as we get into it. So there was 4 of us in there, and we were each kind of doing our own thing and helping out the business and helping our employees. And there's very few employees in this business model. And so we'd have a conference call once a week. And the person that is running the business for us, that is like our go-to person, is getting feedback from 4 different personalities, 4 different ways of doing business, and getting 4 different opinions. And they were, as you can imagine, not knowing who to listen to. And so we recognize that. We burned through a couple people that they're just like, you guys are a disaster as an ownership group. I can't get clear direction. Part of it is because we had the wrong people. The right person would have been able to say, I need direction from one of you, or I will give you direction. You tell me if I'm doing something wrong. So we realized we had the wrong people there. And so that's when we went back and we're like, we've got to hire someone that is really high caliber and can, what I like to say is, make decisions. They can think. They don't need to be told what to do every time. They need to think like an owner, act like an owner, respond as an owner, and be okay making small mistakes and coming to us as owners if they're going to, possibly make some big mistakes, and at least get some feedback from us. And so that was something that we as a partnership decided that we needed. And that's something that we spent a lot of time on as a partnership group, finding that right person, and we found them. And that's when we really got to grow that business pretty rapidly. And that was a real fun time. I mean, it was just a great time, because as owners, we were able to step back and he was doing all of the stuff like that I don't want to be doing. And he was better at it. So here's the thing. You want to get people on your team that are better than you. I'm good at some things, so I'm better at that than my partners. And a lot of times my partners are better at a lot of things than I am. And I'm okay with that. I mean, so when I look at a partner, I want somebody that has a skill set that I don't necessarily have. And today that's super clear to me, like who I need. I don't need a visionary. I don't need someone that just has deep pockets. I don't need somebody that wants to be the board of advisors. I don't need that. That's what I am. That's my role in companies these days, companies that I'm the franchises that I'm going to talk about later. That's my role. And my role is really an advisor. I want to help my partners and my key management avoid mistakes because either I've made them or I've seen people make them. And my goal is to help avoid that so we can have success quicker. Now, I might not be the right partner for most people because I'm not the right partner for myself. Like I wouldn't want another me in the partnership. That would not be helpful. So anyway, that was a great business. And what I learned in that partnership is as we had to get through a lot of the things like the operating agreement. We spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money getting this operating agreement dialed in to where, from the beginning, that way the decisions that we ended up making 5 or 6 years later, we would just refer back to the operating agreement, because at that time, that operating agreement was what we all agreed to before emotions were involved, before dollars were involved, before profits were going to be taken, before there was a big sale and consequences with that. Both, when a sale happens, you want to refer back to some of those things because one partner can stop a sale from happening if that's what you have. And I wouldn't want to be that partner. I wouldn't want that pressure to be on one partner, and I wouldn't want that pressure on me to stop something for everybody else that wants to get something done in the business. So I learned a ton about operating agreements, and then just seeing some of my partners how they handled things. They were better at things than me. They were better at managing employees. They were better at managing the type of employee that we had at the store level. And I learned a lot from them on how they would relate and how they would, work on things and communicate to them. And they were, really good at that. In terms of compensating, how do we compensate employees? How do we help them get ownership into the business from a mindset, and how do we bonus them? And there's a lot of creativity around that in the partners. And some of the partners were really good at negotiating, and some were just really good at just making sure that we are moving along and we're not slowing down. So I just learned a lot from all of my partners in there, and they're all still really good friends of mine, and we'll text and talk on a regular basis. So we ended up exiting that business earlier this year. We had 12 locations and we sold it. But at the same time, I own that one. Me and one of my partners from that business started another one. And this time I, again, went back to the area development because I'd done so well for me in the past. I thought, well, I'm going to do this again. And it got challenging. It got challenging real fast. And I learned some things, not necessarily with the partnership, but some things with the partnership. I'll just go into it. We wanted to, the franchisor wanted us to open up a location. It wasn't required, but it was recommended. And we ended up seeing why it was recommended once we got into it. And he was going to open up a location. And then after we got into it, he said, no, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I don't blame him at all. That was not a point of contention for us. But what we realized, two things: we hired somebody early on with the anticipation of growing really fast. Well, we didn't grow really fast. It wasn't really bad, but it wasn't really good. And so we had a lot of payroll and training, and saying even more than payroll, like we were investing into this person, and we were not able to keep them long-term because we realized like we should have opened up a location if we wanted to help our franchisees out the best. And so we came to this crossroads, and this is really important when, you need to know when it's time to exit, because you don't have what it takes. You're not making the right decisions. You're not meant to be an entrepreneur, all kinds of things. Like you need to anticipate that before it's too late. And that's something that we looked at and we're like, you know what? We're not able to do this as good as we should be able to, or as good as we have the time to be able to do it. And we recognize that. So we said, you know what, it's probably in our best interest to sell this thing and then to move on and to do other things. And that's exactly what we did. And so, and again, that wasn't a bad thing. And the area is doing really well. And it was it was a good thing. It was actually a good sale for us. But it wasn't what we had hoped for. But things changed throughout, as we started to dive deeper into that business. And that's another thing. Whenever you get into a business, it's always going to be harder, take more hours, take more time, no matter what anybody tells you, including myself. Like I tell myself, it's only going to take, 30 minutes of my time a week, and it'll probably take an hour of my time a week, or whatever it is. It always seems to take longer in the beginning. And then as you get into it, that time really decreases. So that was that area development, and we sold that. And at this time, I was like, you know what? I'm done a bunch of partnerships. I'm going to do something on my own. And so I started in the Denver market, and I did buy a franchise. It's just my wife and I. And then I'm like, gosh, this is turning out to be a lot of work. And of course it is, but I was thinking, it'd be nice to have somebody, but it'd also be nice to have all the rewards to myself. So I can have a manager and give them some equity, and then keep all of the profit, and versus like splitting it up 2 ways or 3 ways or 4 ways. And so I'm going to come back to that one, because there's something very interesting that happened with that one and what I learned, but that has just happened recently. So again, going into more brands. So then I bought another one. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my 6th franchise. And I was buying those last year. And I ended up partnering in 3 very different partnership groups. Some I knew really well, and some I didn't know as well. And some had a very good reputation as franchisees. And so I got into these 3 different partnership groups. One is me and somebody I'd met as a consultant. Like I helped him get into a franchise early on, and then we became friends, and now we're business partners. And we're not business partners in just one brand, but we're partners in 2 brands. And then another partnership, there was 3 of us that were opening in the Tennessee market, and we thought, you know what, this is a good partnership. One of the partners had more time than the others, and then we ended up bringing in a 4th partner into that. And I was thinking, why should we bring in a 4th partner into this franchise? Well, they offered something that none of us had, and it was access. It was where they were local, they had knowledge, and so they had a lot to offer. And I put a ton of value on that. That used to be me at one point, and now it's somebody else, and I still see the value. And maybe I see the value in it because that was me, but all the partners see value in that. And so that's why we partnered with 4 of us versus 3 of us. And then another partnership group with just some really smart franchisees, people that I wanted to be around. And we put everything together. And there's a challenge with this one too. There's one partner that just was not the right fit for the group. And I remember early on, some of the other partners would say, are you feeling the same thing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling the same thing. And so we had a choice. And this is where it gets really difficult. But if you don't make the right decision at this point, what was difficult in the beginning will become a nightmare as you get deeper into the partnership. Even though we had the operating agreement pretty much figured out and all of that, I knew what would happen if the partnership didn't make adjustments. So long story short, one of the partners was bought out by the rest of the partners because they just weren't the right fit. And great person, but just not, and part of it, there's a bunch of us entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs, and they were not an entrepreneur. So there was just a different way of thinking. And I probably thought that way at some point, and that way of thinking is not wrong. It's just different. And so if there was a bunch of people that I was the one that was thinking different, I'm probably not the right partner for them. And I would recognize that early on and pull myself out. So anyway, we made that decision early on. We need to change and adjust. And so we ended up buying that partner out. Don't get into partnerships that are going to be difficult. If it's difficult in the beginning, I would imagine that it will only get worse. And I did not want that. And so that's why we made that decision to buy that person out. And now we had 3 of us. None of us wanted to do a whole lot of work. because we all had other things going on, and that's not why we got into the business to begin with. So I said, we need to hire, we need to bring on a partner that's local, because all of us lived out of state. And I said, we need a partner that's local that can actually get the work done that we need done locally. And so we found him, and it was a friend of one of the partners, and it worked out really well. And then we ended up bringing another person into that business, because it's a larger business, and this other person is just absolutely fantastic as well. Now, their role is not to manage the business. Like any of my partnerships, their role is not to manage the business. Their role is to manage the manager. Their role is to be the owner. That's what I want from them. I don't want them managing, being the manager. So that's what a lot of what I was starting last year. And then fast forward to this year, 2019, I bought more franchises. So that's my 7th brand. And I have those in 2 or 3 states. And I have 3 different partnerships. One was just me solo. And I recognized that I had some of my own in the same market, and that I had a partnership, a 50-50 partnership with a friend of mine from high school. And so we have 6 areas together, and I had 3 that were just on my own. Recently, I said, hey, why don't we just combine these together, because we have 2 amazing like district operational managers, and why don't we just put all of our resources together and just grow 9 of them versus like me 3 and us 6. And so that's what we did. It made sense. It took me a while to realize that. I probably should have done that sooner than I did. My mistake, but it was nice to see how that partnership progressed, to make sure like we were on the same page with things. And we've been very much in sync. And here's another thing too. Like I want to under promise and over deliver on the partnership. If I let them know my involvement is going to be X, I want to be able to over deliver on that, at least not under deliver. And so that's really important to me, something that I've learned over the years as well. So I'm partnered with a 50-50 person in Denver. And then that's when I realized like, I don't need 3 locations. I don't need that profit just for myself. It's going to be easier if we do it together. And it's at the end of the day, at some point, it is not about the money. It's about like making life easier. It's about how can you help more people? It really doesn't, the money is a byproduct of success, and success means something completely different. At least that's what it did for me early on. At some point, you just reach that level where it's just, you're making decisions based on other things. So and then just recently I got into another partnership, the same brand. It's a new brand. And we just bought 6 territories in South Carolina. And we were looking at different markets there. And again, there's 2 of them are partners of mine in current businesses that I have, but one of them is a new partner. I've never met him face to face, had phone calls, but more than anything, I trust my other 2 partners, and they trust him, and they've been with him throughout college, and then just seen him, and I know what kind of success he's had. So I felt super comfortable bringing him into that partnership. And I think if I had to talk about some things that were really important to me in a partner, it's trust. It's that ability for all the partners to be very open and honest with each other. Like I want to be really open with my partners. If I feel like I can't be open with them because they're going to judge me or think something or whatever it is, or vice versa, if they can't be open thinking I'm going to react a certain way, if there's not that type of open, authentic, genuine relationship, then we're probably not going to be very good partners. And so trust that what you see is what you get is really important to me, because there will be discussions that come up, and they're not always easy discussions, but it's about combining your brain power together to come up with some really good solutions. And that's what I've seen as just a really big benefit for me and my partnerships. It's just alleviated. I couldn't do what I do today if it wasn't for partnerships. And we'll get into equity and profit sharing and something like that later with district operational managers or like partners like that. But these are real, like these ones are putting money into the business and equity partners from that standpoint. And we do have partners that are more operational partners that are earning equity. And I think that's super interesting. And it's a direction that I've definitely gone with key people because I've made mistakes. Everything that I do, it's really because I've made mistakes with it in the past. So that is that's what I look for. That's my history anyway in partnerships. And I'd love to get any feedback that you have on that, or just follow-up questions, because I might do another episode on this with just follow-up questions. I wanted to give just a broad overview of my background with partnerships. It's really served me well. There have been challenging times with it, but overall, it's been a very positive experience. But it's just, you have to pick the right ones. My one piece of advice is make sure that you can be really open, that there's just that genuine dialogue back and forth. And if the relationship starts to get stressful before anybody signs on the dotted line, then it's probably time to terminate that partnership before it actually is solidified. So I hope you enjoyed this episode on partnerships, and it's just been my stories and my journey in the 7 brands and all over the country. And I realize as I look back, they've all been different, and the partnerships have evolved. Today, what I'm doing is I am partnering with people that need somebody like me, like that's an investor that can provide a level of insight because of my experience. I've been there, I've done that. I've seen the challenges, and I can typically see challenges before someone that's in the weeds or is a new business owner, or maybe hasn't done multiple locations in multiple states and multiple brands at the same time. I do that. And so I have the ability to see what needs to be done and look ahead and anticipate what should be done. So we're making good decisions today that will benefit the business, 1 or 2 or 6 months down the road. So I look for partners like that want that kind. I'm not the guy that's going to be super active in the business though. And all my partners know that. And they're okay with that because they want speed to success. And that's what I bring in my partnerships, is allowing them to focus on the things that move the needle. And I bring insight and direction and connections to speed up success in the businesses. So that's what I have for you. And if you do want to reach out to me, whether it's about partnerships, or if you just want, some insight into maybe it's expanding in your business and doing it through partnerships, or you're just looking at different brands, reach out to me on Franchise Secrets, or go to Call with Eric, ERIK, or Talk with Eric, ERIK, and set up a time. You'll reach Michael, my main guy, and he'll vet you to make sure that we're going to have a productive conversation. And look forward to talking with you.